Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and I'm feeling a little better, not 100%, but hey, the YouTube train doesn't stop, does it? So neither should I. And today we're going to talk about Warhammer The Old World. As you can imagine, I'm very hyped up about this, and the rumors do say that it's going to be later this year. And I know I'm not the only one excited about this. I know there's a lot of returning players and even new players who have never played Warhammer Fantasy Tabletop before who want to dip their toes into the setting. Now this is a video that we did something in the past, but now we have a bunch of new information, so I want to update it, make it as thorough as possible for both old and new players in an effort to prepare yourselves for the eventual release of Warhammer The Old World, because yes, there's a few things that you can do to prepare yourselves right now. So without further ado, let's begin. So we're going to talk about armies first, and this is going to be a big thing whether you're old or you're new, as obviously some of you guys have more interest in certain armies than others. Now what we do know is that every army that had an 8th edition army book will get rules for the launch of Warhammer The Old World. This means that anything that you know from 8th edition Empire, Bretonnia, Warriors of Chaos, yes, the Bretonnia, Beastmen, Skaven didn't really have 8th edition army books, but yeah, they were part of the 8th edition roster. And it is also important to note that the Chaos Dwarfs, which were a supplement in 8th edition, not a full-fledged army, will also have returning rules, which is absolutely fantastic considering that they were widely popular. I have a pretty large army myself. Again, they reiterated that many returning models are coming back, so that makes sense because it's going to be easier for them to re-release old products and then eventually update them as time goes on. Now, something that we do need to talk about here is that the main focus will be the old world-centric armies. So if you're expecting army books and so on, the ones that are likely going to get it first are the Empire, the Dwarves, anything around that area, with the future being able to expand upon. This is something that was said in the Q&A, that eventually they would expand if there was demand. So eventually we will get an army book for, say, for example, the Dark Elves, the Lizard Men, and so on, but that will be very later down the line. You will still have rules for those armies though, so don't you worry, you can still play those factions. I just want to put it out there because I know that a lot of returning players prefer some of the armies to the western portions of the world, or some of the newer ones are just interested in Dark Elves and so on. So now that we know what's coming back, we have to talk about armies. Obviously a lot of you have your old armies, but some of you might want something new, or you're completely new players who want to start getting ready. The great thing is that, yeah, if you know what the army list was for 8th edition, you can find those online. A lot of those models are still available in Games Workshop, at least for now at the time of recording this video. But there's also other websites such as eBay where you can get a decent deal. If you're not used to the army list from 8th edition, it's not that difficult to find one online for the army book of your choice, and that will give you a gauge as to what you can buy and what you can use in Warhammer The Old World. And yes, I know some people are going to say, well, what's the point of new minis that are coming out? We don't know how many new minis are actually going to come out at launch. We know there's some already for the Tomb Kings and obviously for the Bretonnians, but even then, don't expect every faction to have new minis. Expect a lot of the factions to have old stuff. And really, a lot of the old miniatures actually did hold up quite well. The main thing here is pick an army that you like and just expand upon it. I imagine it's not going to be like 8th edition, which was a major problem for Warhammer Fantasy, where you're going to need like groups of 50, but groups of 20 to 25 might be good, and just expand from there. Then again, you could be like me where you're just buying loads of them because you just want to have the options, you want to have different color schemes and all that type of stuff. Getting started now basically means that you can play at launch, and while we still don't know the launch date just yet, it's always good to get your armies going. Again, it's very likely this year, it's very likely near the end of the year, so it's going to take a while to build and paint an army. If you've already got an army sorted, yeah, don't worry, we're going to talk about basing issues in just a little bit. But the main thing for newer players or people just wanting new armies in general, have a read through the army books, have a read through lore. You can find those online, and you can find out which faction interests you the most, as remember, each of the factions do play quite differently. Yes, we don't know how it's going to work in Warhammer The Old World, but considering that every Warhammer Fantasy edition did have every race and every faction acting quite differently, that is safe to assume that it's going to stay the same way, especially since Games Workshop did say that this is still going to feel like Warhammer Fantasy. If you're looking to buy models, the first thing you need to do is check if it's still available by Games Workshop. If Games Workshop still have it, then you can find some other websites, like for example Element Games, which I have an affiliate link in the description below, by the way. You can get a decent discount and it helps the channel out with no cost to you, so I just got to plug that in. But websites like that mean that you can get discounted stuff on Warhammer official products for 10 to 25% off depending on the stuff, and that means that you can get your armies sorted cheaper, because while they might be on circular bases, it's still the same units. A Savage Orc is still a Savage Orc. The Free Cities handgunners are still Empire handgunners. There's a massive amount of miniatures that are still available, even some High Elves, and a larger portion of the Dark Elf roster is still there, which means, yeah, you can build up your armies now and not have to worry. Out of production stuff, well, there's obviously, again, websites like eBay, Troll Trader, all these are quite good. There's a lot of them out there, and it's just about finding a good deal. The way I see it is you compare that to a box of something else. It's very easy to go on eBay and get absolutely scammed, where you could see a box of, say, let's go with High Elf Spearmen, right? But seeing that for like £120, that's not worth £120. New in box, sure, because you get the box art and so on, but just the sprue or just the minis built up or kind of badly painted, which you're going to strip, yeah, it's not worth £120. What you can do is compare it to the prices that you see on Games Workshop, normal stuff. So compare it, if you're looking at High Elf stuff, compare it to other Age of Sigmar boxes. Is it more or less the same price? If so, then you're fine. Don't pay more than you would normally pay at a Games Workshop store, that's for sure. Again, this fits for returning players and new players. If you want to build up your army, or if you want to start an army, try not to get scammed. I know a lot of people are offering advice online. Hell, I'll be here to offer as much advice as possible. Pop down to the streams, ask me a question. If you see a box and you're not too sure about, I'll be happy to offer some advice regarding the prices. Now we have to talk about a certain section of out of production stuff. You see, a bunch of stuff was taken off, but it was actually just updated into a new model. This is stuff like Chaos Warriors, Saurus Warriors, and so on and so forth. Now, we know for a fact that the Chaos Warriors do rank on the old 25s. We'll talk about bases a bit later. So it's very likely that they will rank up on the new ones anyway. But we don't know for the Saurus just yet. Nobody's been able to put them on squares, I think, just yet. Mangler squigs were updated from the old metal variant to be a bit larger, but still fulfill the same role. It's just one of these things where a bunch of these miniatures have been updated. It's very likely that these miniatures will also be used. It's not really backward compatible, it's literally just the same model. I imagine that Games Workshop will likely use the stuff that makes sense in Age of Sigmar now, you know, these old miniatures which were updated in Old World 2, because it's like, well, you know, it's the same thing. It's literally the same unit. Although you are perfectly fine to go find some of the older ones. Hopefully some of the older ones do return, because the Chaos Warriors looking like a proper legion was always kind of cool, and just buy those. But it very much depends on what you prefer. Okay, now we have to talk about base sizes. You see, base sizes are changing for Warhammer The Old World. They're going to be larger than they were in Warhammer Fantasy Battle, and to be honest, I've been rebasing some of my miniatures and it looks quite good. We know that 20s are moving up to 25mm squares. It's very much an educated guess that cavalry will be 30 by 60, and that bigger infantry such as Chaos Warriors and Orcs will use 30mm. Until that gets confirmed, we're not going to know, but Games Workshop did say that before the release happens, they will confirm all the base sizes. Now, there's a few things that you can do here. You can actually rebase your troops, which is going to take a while. Just be very slowly cutting around and you'll be fine without any damage. I know some people think otherwise, but I've done a healthy amount of skeletal warriors for the Tomb Kings. I've literally had them removed off their bases and put onto 25s. And yeah, I only had one issue with one model having some damage, and that's literally because my cat jumped on the table and spooked me. So yeah, you're perfectly fine to be able to start rebasing some of your basic stuff already and just get them ready. For those totally against rebasing, you don't have to. Keep in mind that you can just use a movement tray. There's even some skirmish style movement trays which will allow you to have the same footprint that you're going to need. And keep in mind that the base sizes really only matters if, well, the other player really cares, or if you're doing like a tournament. In most cases, it's fine, barring competitive play. Competitive play is where the base sizes really matter the most. But if you want the true Warhammer Fantasy experience, you're going to want to have at least the footprint there. Now, the reason why I am actually rebasing is because, look, we know for a fact that new models are going to come out. They're going to be a bit larger scale, they're going to fit onto the new bases, they're not going to fit onto the old ones. So if I had, like, say, for example, a bunch of skeletal warriors for the Tomb Kings, still on 20s, but the Tomb King only fits on a 25, he wouldn't really look nice enough to rank up with, right? Or it would just look like a weird unit. Now, regarding newer players or buying models in general now, but not having the correct base sizes because we don't know them just yet, barring the 25 mils, what can you do? Can you still build and paint your models to at least get them ready, so then all you have to do is rebase or put them on the correct movement tray? And yeah, you can. So a good thing that I've always done is put a very small drop of super glue on the feet of the miniatures and on a basic base just to build and paint them up, and then from there it's easy to rip off. Don't use the plastic glue. Plastic glue itself will melt the actual feet of the model into the base, right? So they'll be conjoined permanently and it'll take a while to actually remove them. It'll likely cause some damage and so on. Whereas super glue is easier just to rip off. Just a very, very small drop. So say for example right now, if you decide to pick up some Empire handgunners, right? These are the Free Cities handgunners. They actually sometimes come with their old square bases. This is the 20 mils. Now you want them on 25s, but if you want to get them ready, if you want to build them up in the colors of Null or Middenheim or whatever, get them sorted. Put a little bit of super glue on the foot, the rest you can use plastic glue for everything else, and then afterwards, when you get your hands on 25s, just rip off the bases. Same thing with orcs or anything else. Savage orcs, which are known as Savage Uruks in Age of Sigmar, will come in the round bases. Build them up on the rounds. Paint them on the rounds. Don't bother painting up the base and so on. And then when it comes to the time, just rip it off and then put it onto the actual base that you need. This would be very likely a 30 mil base. I know this might seem a bit obvious to more older, experienced players, but to the newer ones or people who are just wanting to jump into the hobby, this is definitely going to help you out, as you can get your armies started and then go from there. Something you might want to do is familiarize yourself with some basic rules. While yes, we are expecting rule changes all around, we do know for a fact, and this has been stated by Games Workshop, that they've looked towards 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th edition. So basic stuff like kind of combat style, combat in general, how magic works, movement, stuff like that is valuable to know. Again, stuff could change, but it's going to feel familiar. They've said it very, very often. So if you're a new player or if you haven't played for a while, getting yourself known and familiar with these rules will be very beneficial to you when eventually this does drop. Last thing you want to be thrown at is, I don't know, a 200-page rulebook and be a bit confused, especially if you're a newer player. So getting used to some basic stuff already is going to really help. And lastly, familiarize yourself with the lore. Now, don't you worry, I'm going to be releasing a bunch of lore videos and so on regarding this setting, but this isn't the Warhammer fantasy that you know. This isn't the era of Karl Franz, this isn't the era of VIKRAM Grudgebearer, this is much, much before, where the grander scale chaos invasion, barring, the end times, which nobody really wants to pay attention to, happens. This is the reign of Asavar as the Ever-Chosen. This is the Great War which destroyed Prague. This is the event where we know of Kolek smashing down the walls of Prague. So much happens during this time period, like, for example, the founding of the Colleges of Magic, and just so much more. So I see this as the perfect time for people to be able to read up some stuff. We don't know too much about the events. There will be more lore books in the future, hopefully novels and so on. But if you're interested and you want to learn a little bit about that time period, there are some games that even have a little bit of context, what happens after. But you can see that a lot of stuff didn't really change. This is why I'm saying that you can buy old school minis, because we have handgunners and so on, right? This is stuff like Chaos Bane or Mark of Chaos. Mark of Chaos is a fantastic game. Those will help you learn a little bit of the lore from that period too. And I believe that pretty much covers everything. Obviously in the future, as more information comes out, I'll have more stuff on the channel, and don't you worry, when we get closer and closer to release, once we start hearing like rules and so on, I'll start like trying to translate it to be as easy as possible, because Games Workshop sometimes make things too overly complicated when it actually can be said in like 10 words rather than a 4-paragraph, But let me know what you guys think about this in the comments below. Do you have any other advice to offer new and returning players? Those would be helpful to say in the comments below too, as it's about time that we banded together. We all started getting ready. I've been really trying to sort out stuff. As you guys know, I'm ill right now, so I've been painting up some Tomb King chariots. I'm going to start moving on to my Bretonnians when I'm feeling a bit better, as they'll obviously require a lot more work color-wise. But yeah, I'm feeling confident. I'm feeling happy. But yeah, have a great day, guys, and I'll see you all again very, very soon.